Hi everybody, this is Dave Thomas again with another rocket kit build. This is the Nova Payloader by Estes, and this video is going to be a bit different from most of my other rocket build videos in that I'm going to be recording this as I am teaching a live in-person class. So my interaction with the video and the tone and style of my wording and such are going to be a little bit different because I'm actually addressing this to a group of students rather than usual where I address this directly to the viewer. But other than that, this is still going to be pretty much the same. The Nova Payloader is a good third or fourth rocket. It uses a little bit more advanced techniques than the simplest rockets do, but this is actually still a fairly easy build, and you'll get a relatively large rocket that is big enough not to put a chicken egg in, but you can put a quail egg in it if you want, or some other small payload, including something like an altimeter. And so when we come back, I will be engaged in the class, and we will start with the inventory of the parts. Alright, go ahead and open up your kits. So we're taking a little bit step up here. This is going to require a bit more assembly on the fins. And it is a payloader, though not big enough to launch an egg in, unless you have like a quail egg or a robin egg or something like that. Let's go ahead and turn to page 1 here, go through the checklist, make sure your kit has everything. Alright, so you should have a sheet of balsa with the fins, body tube, clear payload tube, nose cone. The nose cone comes in 2 pieces. The base of the nose cone is going to be in this little parts bag here. And it's actually the clear one. There's a white one in here too. That's going to become the base of the payload section, excuse me. Alright, and then all of our motor mount parts are inside here. Motor mount may be inside the body tube. Okay, launch lug, engine clip, shock cord, and parachute. And then for this class, this is going to be something a little different. The decals are what are called water slide decals. So these you cut out, you soak them in water, and then there's a film that slides off there, and that is the decal. So it's a little bit more challenging than the self-stick ones that we've been doing. Everybody good? Got everything? So first of all, we need to mark this on one end as aft so we don't get it turned around. And then from the aft end, we're going to make a mark at 2.5 centimeters. And then another mark at 6 millimeters from the forward end. And it's best if you don't have them quite in line because the engine hook is going to cover that lower mark if you have them directly above each other. Okay, and then at that 6 millimeter mark, go ahead and cut a slit there that's about 3 millimeters long. And this is just where the engine hook forward end will pop into place. And that's just going to pop right onto here. Okay. And if you had your 2 marks in line, it's going to completely cover the other mark. So if that's the case, go ahead and extend that aft mark just a little bit. Alright, and it's showing putting glue underneath the engine hook. Don't do that. It's not going to stick anyway. Alright, next go ahead and get your 2 centering rings. They're the green ones here. And these are identical, it doesn't matter which one you got. And here we do want some glue. So I'm going to go ahead and dry fit these first. And so one of them is going to slide all the way down to your aft mark, like that. The other one is going to go just over where the engine hook went in the forward end. So that'll lock that into place. Alright, and as long as that all fits, then we'll go ahead and glue this. So just put a ring of glue around the tube here just forward of your aft marking. And then just slide that ring down into the glue and stop at your mark. And then any excess glue that got pushed forward, just smooth into a fillet with your finger. And then do the same thing with the forward ring. Put a ring of glue right around the forward end here. And then again, slide that on and just put it over the front end of the engine hook. And then once more, go ahead and smooth that into a fillet. And then you can add fillets to the forward edges of each ring. Just don't get glue up on the ring itself. And you can just set that aside to dry. Alright, while our mount is drying, go ahead and get your fin material out and some sandpaper. Use either the 150 or the 220 grit. And just go ahead and sand both sides of the sheet first of all. If you have any fins that have popped out, see if you can just put them back in to start with. Once you've got all the edges sanded and square, the leading edge here that's parallel with the grain, we're going to round that off like we've done with some of the other ones. But leave all of the other edges square and don't do any rounding on the little tiny fin pieces here, because those are going to be glued on after we get the leading edges sanded, and they'll go onto the trailing edge like that. So just go ahead and round off those leading edges, and then we'll come back with some either wax paper or aluminum foil to put these on and glue them together. So for this part, now you're going to take one of the fins here, and it's a good idea to have a straight edge like your ruler. And we want to do this on aluminum foil, or if you do this in the future, you can use wax paper, even plastic wrap. You want something that the Elmer's glue will not stick to. And what we'll do is glue one of these little pieces on to the trailing edge of each fin. Just so it's going to end up like this. So we'll have 3 of these assemblies drying at the end of this. And we're going to do this kind of like we've done fins in the past, putting them onto the body tube. So I'm just going to put a little tiny amount of glue on the shortest edge here of these little fin extensions. And just take my finger and smooth that out so it's just an even thin film. Okay, and I'm going to put that against the ruler. I'm going to touch it to the fin. I'm going to pull it back just a little bit here. Wait 60 seconds and then stick it back on. Alright, so let's go ahead and put this on now. And the glue should be tacky enough that once it's stuck, you just give it a few seconds of pressure and then just kind of slide it. Oop, come on. It's trying to glue itself to the foil. In fact, and just take the whole ruler and shove it over there. Okay, so I'm just going to move that over to a side here. Try and keep it as flat as you can. So if you got bubbles or something underneath the aluminum foil, just kind of flatten all that down. And then just do this with the other 2 fins as well. And then we're going to need to let this dry for at least half an hour before we want to work with it. Okay, so everybody has a photocopy now of the front page. And I did this because in the instructions, our next step is to cut out the fin marking guide, and then we'll do the shock cord a little bit later. But the fin marking guide and the shock cord mount are actually on part of the instructions we need. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to cut both of these out now just so we got it done. So go ahead and cut out the tube marking guide and the shock cord mount. And we'll just set that aside. Alright, now go ahead and take your body tube here, and again mark one end as aft so we don't get it turned around. And then wrap your fin guide around, and this little rectangular spot at the end is the overlap area, so that's going to go on first. And then overlap it with the other end and line up the cross marks there. And then go ahead and tack that down with a little piece of masking tape. Okay, and then just like we've done the other ones, go through and mark each side. And the one that says LL, that's your launch lug line. So mark it on the tube as such. So that's my launch lug. I'm just going to put a little L there. And then just rotate it around and make sure that it didn't slide, which mine did. Okay, and if you've got a slidey one of the things you can do to prevent that is also take a little bit of masking tape and use that to attach it to the tube. I'm going to have to go through here and erase these and try again. Alright, so there's my launch lug line. At least 10 centimeters for the fins and all the way along the length of the tube for the launch lug. Okay, so they're showing you putting 2 rings of glue in there to begin with. But what's going to happen if you just do it that way is the forward ring, when you put it in, it's going to shove all that glue forward. So what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and put a ring of glue in at about 5 centimeters inside. All right, and then we'll push this in a little bit, and then we'll put another ring of glue just inside the body tube here, and then push this all the way in until it's flush with the end of the body tube like that. Okay, so go ahead and use an applicator. Okay, so I'm just going to put glue around my applicator here. And then I'm going to take my ruler and give me a rough estimate of where I need to be. Put my thumbnail there at 5 centimeters from the tip. Stick this in and then bring it into the inside. Wipe all the way around there. Alright, and then I'm just going to slide this part in just enough to clear the centering ring. Put some more glue on my swab. And then carefully, and you can bend the motor mount out of the way as you need to do this. You may actually need to use the stick end. There's not a lot of room there. So you can bend that down out of the way. Put the glue inside there. Turn and repeat. And if you slop some onto the motor mount, it's not a big deal. Now the trick here is you want to do this all fairly quickly so that the stuff you put on further in does not get super tacky and cause it to lock up. So now I'm just going to push this all the way through and just make it even. And I'm going to put my engine hook so that it is close to, if not directly aligned with the launch lug here. So it's going to rest like that. And then once again, go ahead and let that sit and dry for a few minutes at least. Alright, while that's drying, let's go ahead and skip ahead to page 3 and we'll do the assembly of the nose cone and the payload bay. get your nose cone there, and then all the other parts are inside, so you need the big base and the smaller base and this little sleeve. Alright, so for the first part you need the nose cone and the small clear base. And here, go ahead and, whoa, that's going all over the place. Yep. Alright, and you're just going to run a bead of glue, plastic cement, around the inside of the nose cone. And then just put the base in, twist it back and forth a couple of times to seat it, and set that aside. And then for the payload coupler, which is the bigger plastic base and then this white ring, you're going to do this similarly. What the white ring is going to do is provide a means of connecting the actual payload bay tube. And so you're, again, put a bead of glue around this. That's way too much, actually. Hopefully that doesn't go. And then slide that sleeve over. Okay, and that's going to push the glue forward. If the glue actually gets pushed beyond the length of the sleeve, just wipe that off with a tissue or paper towel. Let me get rid of some of that excess just because it's a lot. And then that can be set aside. Alright, so yeah, just like on the Wizard, we're going to fill these fins. So go ahead and take your pins, put them into the root edges parallel to the grain. Okay, and then go ahead and take your, once you got those in, you'll need to add a little bit of water to your wood filler there and stir that up. Okay, and then you can go ahead and just take one of the cotton applicators or finish stirring that around, and just like we did on the last rocket, just smear this over each side of the fin. Do both sides quickly so they don't bend. And then you can stick the pins into the edge of your corrugated cardboard that you've got on your rocket stands. And just do it for all three fins. Remember to try and keep it off the root edge. If it gets on there, you can sand it off, but that just gives you more work. Alright, while our filler is drying, go ahead and get your payload section and your nose cone and the base here. So the nose cone should be fully dried since this has gone overnight. And that looks fine as well. And so on one end of this clear payload section, we're going to put a very thin amount of plastic model cement just inside the edge. And then take this base assembly and slide that in right up to the plastic. I'm just going to turn this a bit here while I put some pressure on it to make sure we get the cement evenly distributed. And you'll be able to kind of see inside there if you have big air gaps or blobs of glue. And I'm just pressing on this as I go around to help distribute that more evenly. And then that can be set aside once more. And then the next thing you can do is the shock cord mount. This is going to be the same as all the other shock cord mounts we've done. So you can just pre-fold this. And then open it back up again. All right, and just make yourself a nice even layer of glue. Okay, and then put your shock cord in over the 2 and the 3 at a little bit of an angle, and then fold it all up. And then also, like we've done before, go ahead and just impart some curvature to it so it'll stick into the body tube easier. Okay, and then glue that face and slide it down at least 1.5 inches into the body tube, preferably as far as you can get it. Just press that against the inside of the body tube while you support it. Alright, well, all of our glues are drying. Go ahead and get your parachutes. Now, because of our payload section, the parachute's not going to tie into the nose cone here. It's going to tie into this base piece on our payload bay. And again, you can just tie this on like the directions show, but as we did on our last parachute model, we're going to put a snap swivel on to allow for greater interchangeability. And this also shows why sometimes you need a different snap swivel. Normally I would use a smaller one than what I gave you guys here, but this has a larger eye loop on it, and the smaller snaps won't fit across this and still swivel. So we have to use a bigger one. Okay, so just gather them all up like we did before. Hold the parachute by the middle. Alright, and then adjust the shroud lines to get all of the corners approximately even. And then gather that loop together. Pass it through the swivel end. And then pass the entire snap swivel through. Right. Recheck the shrouds. Close enough. And then just put a little tiny dab of glue on that knot to keep it in place. And then allow that to dry. So we have more stuff to hurry up and wait. Alright guys, one other thing we can do while we're waiting for stuff to dry is first of all check your fin lines and just hold them up against your fins here and make sure that the lines are longer than the fin so you'll be able to have something to align with. And then if you need to, you can just extend those out. But then just take some 220 grit sandpaper and go ahead and sand lightly along those lines to roughen up the glassine there and give us a better gluing surface. And remember, one of those lines is your launch lug. It's going to be different. Okay, and then for your launch lug line, measure up 9 centimeters from the aft end. So there's my launch lug line. And just make a cross mark there. And then the aft end of the launch lug will glue at that point. But don't put it on until we get the fins ready. But you can go ahead and sand that region too. Centimeters. About 9. 10 won't hurt it. Go ahead and check your fins and first just feel them. See if they feel damp. All right, they should feel dry at this point. And as long as they are, then go ahead, you can pull the pin out and then take your fine or extra fine, so 150 to 220 grit, and just sand off the excess here. Definitely put a paper towel under it though so that all this dust gets easily collected. And it's just a matter of sanding it down until it's smooth. Make sure that the root edge gets completely sanded down to the grain again so that the filler doesn't interfere with the glue later on. This part is optional, but one of the things I've seen Rocketeers do, and I've done this myself, is to strengthen the edges of body tubes and motor tubes and such. You can put a little bit of super glue on there. There we go. Okay, and what you do here is right around the inside of the body tube, I'm just going to run a little bit of super glue and let it soak into the cardboard here. And this is just reinforcing the fibers of the cardboard so that during ejection or packing of the parachute or putting the nose cone on, it's less likely to bend out of shape. And then once you've got it in there, immediately, well, close to immediately, then take a tissue or a paper towel and just wipe around the inside here. You're going to take most of it off, and the only thing be left in there is what's soaked into the cardboard. In some cases, you may, if you do this, you may have to do a little sanding after it's dried if it adds too much thickness. But usually this doesn't add a whole lot, and it'll make your nose cone fit better. Same thing down here on the motor mount, and it's a little bit trickier here because we've got that retainer in the way. But you can do the same thing, is just add a little bit right around the edge. Okay, let that soak in for a few seconds and then wipe it out as well. And then again with the motor mount one, you might have to do a little bit of sanding, so we'll test these with motors once they're completely dry. But normally it doesn't add that much thickness, and it makes your motor mount a little bit stronger. So beyond that, once you've got your fins completely sanded again, go ahead and take a tissue and wipe off any of the excess sanding dust. And then we'll go ahead and attach these just like we've done other fins in the past. So start with a thin bead of glue on the root edge, touch it to the body tube, pull it back off, wait 60 seconds, and then put it back on again. And the little angled piece at the bottom should be flush with the aft end of the tube. Okay. Pull that off, wait 60 seconds, put it back on. Check everything for alignment. Let that fin dry for 15 minutes and go to the next one. We'll probably only have time today for one fin. So go ahead and get your first fin on, and then we'll let these dry till tomorrow. My fins are all dry, and I'm going to add the launch lug now. I'll just glue this in place. So at the little cross mark I made earlier, just to make sure that's straight. And while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and put on the fillets for my fins. So just add some glue here. And then smooth that in. Alright, and then we'll just go all around all the fins here and do the same thing. And then be sure to wipe off any excess glue so we don't just have extra weight or little blobs of glue that are going to interfere with our finish. And then I'm just going to look for any little gaps here. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then just as soon as the glue dries on my launch lug there, I'll apply a fillet to that off camera. Now that my fillets are all finished, the last thing to do is to attach the shock cord to the payload bay. And this simply involves tying a double knot on the shock cord here. Okay, and then tighten it from both directions so it doesn't slip through like that almost did. And then I recommend putting just a little dab of glue on there. I'm not going to do it right now because I want to be able to separate this for painting. And then our parachute simply connects on to the same eyelet on the payload bay. And either with the snap swivel or you can just tie it on. Okay, and then the nose cone goes on like this. The instructions recommend putting a piece of cellophane tape around this joint here to keep this from coming off during flight and recovery. An alternative is you can put a little bit of tape on the shoulder for a friction fit here. Either one is appropriate. Okay, I've got a little scratch there. Okay, and this is structurally finished. As I say, I'm going to untie the shock cord again for the painting process. But we're finished here structurally with the rocket. Paint it however you like. I'm not going to go into painting and decals here. With that, have a safe flight, a safe recovery, And I'll be back next time with another rocket.